Thank you for joining this very important panel, because nothing happens without financing, and we have here presence of gentlemen who can share their view on how to make Angola not only attractive destination as a tourism sector, but also how financial side can impact making it faster, better, easier, let's say, for other capital markets to enter the market as well. So my first question goes to Victor. I just wanted to mention that Victor is going to answer his questions in Portuguese, so if you want to hear what he has to say, please wear the headset. That will help you a lot. And the first question would be, beyond hotels and resorts, where do you see the greatest untapped investment opportunities in Angola?
Muito obrigado, boa tarde a todos. Muito obrigado pela questão, Olga. Portanto, acho que o grande potencial não se resume apenas no turismo de alojamento. Portanto, Angola tem várias potencialidades, como aqui já foram ditas. Portanto, eu diria que toda a cadeia de valor do turismo podemos encontrar oportunidades. Portanto, iria destacar a questão das infraestruturas, que são fundamentais, principalmente aquelas do suporte à mobilidade, portanto, transporte e logística, portanto, que são essenciais para de facto, este caminho do turismo que nós queremos percorrer. E aqui, portanto, isto, falando aqui um bocadinho mais macro, os bancos podem exercer aqui um papel fundamental, quer na mobilização de recursos para o desenvolvimento dessas infraestruturas, tanto financiando diretamente o Estado ou através de parcerias público-privadas. Portanto, sem infraestruturas adequadas não é possível termos desenvolvimento no turismo. Também eu acho que tanto a área do turismo, que nós temos grandes vantagens comparativas relativamente às demais países, tem a ver com o turismo de natureza e de aventuras. Portanto, Angola tem 1.600 km de área costeira, tem uma biodiversidade portanto, muito atrativa, portanto, belezas naturais, tem portanto, uma extensa área inexplorada. Portanto, temos imenso potencial, temos imensas condições para nos posicionarmos como um destino turístico de preferência. Portanto, e eu acho que é aqui que reside a principal oportunidade do turismo em Angola. Portanto, há outras áreas, naturalmente, a questão do turismo cultural e da valorização do património, que também não pode ser esquecido. Não nos podemos esquecer que parte substancial das viagens internacionais decorrem deste motivo, né, de turismo cultural, e também temos um grande potencial nesta área. Portanto, é uma questão de identidade, valorização da nossa identidade. Mas também o próprio turismo, o agroturismo. Portanto, já temos aqui algumas iniciativas com algum sucesso, de fazendas que integraram produção nacional com o ecoturismo. Portanto, eu diria que há um manancial de oportunidades. Portanto, acho que aqui o desafio é conseguirmos construir um ecossistema integrado e que seja capaz de proporcionar boa experiência aos turistas.
Thank you very much. My next question goes to Antonio, considering that we could learn a lot from other emerging markets, and I think it's really worth sharing what strategies and what financing models were most successful for the tourism sector in other emerging destinations.
First of all, thank you for having me, and hello to everyone in the audience. I'd also like to address that there are different financing models that can be adopted to the respective type of tourism we're doing. I've been sitting here the whole morning and we're talking about tourism as a whole. And when we get to financing, I think there are certain requirements that the financier, the banks, would look to in terms of supporting a project, and most of it is around sustainability of repayment. And in terms of when you look at the Angolan tourism, I think we need to start looking at what type of tourism is Angola looking for. And I classify them in two big buckets. You've got the high value tourism, and then you've got the broad or the tourism for the masses. And the two are not enemies between themselves, they're complementary. And if you look at Angola current status, and we've heard about the infrastructure, lack of it, or the need to develop the infrastructure, that actually plays very well with the high value tourism that we can adopt immediately. I mean, today, tomorrow, and then that tourism, or those tourists, they look for an experience, and we see the neighboring countries such as Botswana, Tanzania, Zambia, which do have that kind of tourism. So this is a financing requirement in terms of infra, which is not very high, so it's not a high value, which can be easily bankable. And we're also talking about a type of tourist which is happy to, or has got the ability to pay a premium for this experience. Talking about eco-lodges, things in nature reserves, ecotourism, which come at a value. And these can easily be funded through traditional bank structures or investment funds that support this type of investments. I think if I'm not mistaken, the IFC has one, around $70 million for ecotourism. And then we've got the larger projects, which include also roads, includes the larger resorts. And there we need to look into a different type of financiers. You have DFIs that fund these type of projects because they are larger scale. We have international banks. We can get MEGA cover for this type of projects, which could provide a capital relief in terms of political risk that the operators will be looking at it. I think also prior to this, there was a mention around the understanding of the ownership of the real estate and then the operator. And this is something that I think the banks will clearly look at too. Having a strong brand at the start in an unknown country like Angola is clearly a mitigant to the risk. So the operator, the comfort that he will bring in terms of ability to generate inflow of tourists is part of the financial model that will be considered. However, when we see the region and the continent as a whole, especially sub-Saharan Africa, if you just exclude South Africa, which is a very developed country in terms of MICE tourism and the likes, and even normal, we have a clear advantage as Angola to be part of a huge ecosystem around what Africa tourism is. And just a last comment, I mean, I heard Alberto saying 50% of tourism goes to Europe and 5% to Africa, but I think that's a skewed view because you need to exclude the low-cost tourism. And the low-cost tourism does not come to Africa. So we actually have a much higher potential of capturing the high-value tourism, and there is a large demand for it. So between the chicken and the egg, what comes first, the demand or the offer? I think they are hand in hand. So there's a clear demand today. It's not broad. It's not explained in a broad manner, but we already have that today. I think there's also a lack of coming up with statistics in Angola, because my belief, and when I travel around the country, there's a lot of high-value tourism going around. It's not captured anywhere. And this is also, I think, a challenge I create to the statistic company in the Institute of Angola to try and capture this, because with data, you get more confidence from the investors. You get more confidence from the bankers, and you get more confidence from the whole ecosystem as a whole.
Cannot agree more. We've been speaking about how to make it attractive in terms of like the destination itself, right? But speaking of investment, it's ecosystemic approach always. So it's always hard to choose one or the other, and most of the times going for both is the easiest way, to be honest, because then you have more diligence in what you're doing, and not only in tourism sector, but overall, right? And now my question goes to Atia. Considering your experience in European funds, and in general, you've seen the market so far, the Angolan market, what would be your advice on how for Angola to tap into international capital? What should they do or improve, or what steps to take in terms of FDI?
Okay, thank you, Olga, the question. It's a good question. But first of all, let me introduce myself. And thanks for the opportunity that I can be here in this panel and also here in Angola. This is my first time in Angola, but in the last 2 days I have a possibility to visit, short visit in Luanda, and to go to the Kwanza River and have a short safari there. And I see there's huge potential in Angola, in the Angolan tourism. But the potential only itself, it's not a project. And what can be financed is just a project. No one will give you money because you have a beautiful coastline or you have good possibilities. You have to structure the project. And after you structured it, you can see what kind of finance possibilities can be good for this project. Because there are so many. You can go for the European Union to help. They can help to prepare the project, exactly. You can use blended finances. We have to see which part of the project can be financed from which financial instrument. We have grant systems. Of course, European Union don't want to give non-refundable grants for projects like a hotel investment, but for infrastructure investment, for tourism destinations, they have the possibility. And we can connect these projects together, and together they can be financed or granted.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the response because, in my humble opinion, it's always ecosystemic, right? The investments always come together. It doesn't take like one hotel management or whatever to come into the country. It's always like discussions and more ecosystemic approach. Since we have your view on more international investment, I'll go back to Victor and ask him what could local entities do to help to make it more attractive and to help international companies to be more welcomed in the region?
Bem, Olga, eu acho que as instituições financeiras podem atuar em 3 dimensões. Primeiramente, portanto, naquilo que é a nossa função mais tradicional, que é a concessão de crédito, na estruturação de operações de financiamento que sejam adequadas ao setor. Portanto, vou-me socorrer aqui alguns dados financeiros, alguns dados estatísticos da minha instituição. Portanto, em 2025 nós tivemos um crescimento bastante significativo a nível do crédito. Portanto, tivemos cerca de 70% de crescimento. O crédito em 2025 situou-se em 1,7 mil milhões de dólares, portanto, bilhões de dólares. Infelizmente, portanto, o próprio ratio de transformação saiu de 23% para 43%, portanto, de forma bastante expressiva, que demonstra bem o compromisso do banco para financiar a economia. Mas, infelizmente, portanto, o setor de turismo tem, digamos, uma parcela muito ínfima deste crédito. Portanto, pesa no balanço do banco apenas 0,2%. O que é absolutamente insignificante. Portanto, mas isso dá também aqui uma margem de progressão muito grande. Portanto, temos aqui um espaço para progredir este crédito, naturalmente mitigando os riscos, tanto partilhando riscos, a partilha também de ter garantias adequadas e tudo mais. O banco dispõe de um conjunto de soluções de crédito, mas eu gostaria de destacar, portanto, aquela que nós temos, que tem, digamos, que é um regime especial promovido pelo regulador, que é o Aviso 9, que inicialmente foi um aviso destinado ao crédito de habitação, o fomento do crédito de habitação, e mais recentemente, em 2024, foi uma atualização em que foram introduzidos, tanto empreendimentos turísticos. Portanto, falo desse crédito porque tem condições bastante bonificadas, tem uma taxa de juro de 7%, o capital mutuado pode ir até 200 milhões de kwanzas, e depois o prazo depende do projeto. Portanto, e como é bastante competitivo, destaco aqui este financiamento. Portanto, hoje, a nossa preocupação, porque estamos na era da sustentabilidade, também temos essa preocupação de introduzir critérios da ESG, critérios de sustentabilidade aos projetos, tentar, no fundo, consciencializar as empresas, os mutuários a adotarem os princípios da sustentabilidade, tanto projetos amigos do ambiente, projetos que sejam impactantes do ponto de vista comunitário. Também gostaria de destacar, tanto a nível particular do BAE, para pequenos créditos particulares, já fazemos, portanto, temos estado a caminhar para a digitalização dos processos, para tornar os processos mais céleres do ponto de vista de decisão. Estamos a trabalhar também no modelo de aprovação de crédito digital para pequenas e médias empresas, mas, digamos, essa sofisticação necessita de uma coisa, que é de informação. Portanto, que é algo que as empresas também têm que melhorar, a parte da prestação de informações, né, de relatórios e contas, informações financeiras atualizadas, preferencialmente relatórios auditados e credíveis e recorrentes. Portanto, mas há também uma segunda dimensão que os bancos podem participar, e aqui já me referi às parcerias público-privadas. Portanto, acho que os bancos devem desempenhar um papel ativo no que diz respeito às parcerias público-privadas. Sabemos já alguns casos práticos, o Ministério dos Transportes já tem feito algumas concessões, acho que o próprio Ministério do Turismo também tem algumas concessões a nível de parques nacionais, o Ministério da Construção com também as concessões rodoviárias, mas acho que aqui os bancos têm um papel preponderante a desempenhar, quer na estruturação dos modelos financeiros, mas também na mobilização de recursos ou na angariação de recursos financeiros para financiar estes projetos. E, por último, portanto, eu diria que os bancos, como têm um papel importante, é na modernização dos sistemas de pagamento. Quando me refiro aos sistemas de pagamento, a questão da aceitação universal dos cartões de bandeira internacional, portanto, e a questão também da digitalização dos pagamentos, portanto, para facilitar a rastreabilidade dos pagamentos e, no fundo, colaborar também para a formalidade das transações. Portanto, eu diria que tanto os bancos devem, digamos, exercer aqui um papel importante neste dinamismo do turismo. Portanto, aqui há uma enorme oportunidade, mas é necessário, de facto, acautelar os riscos. Portanto, como qualquer setor, portanto, os modelos de avaliação de risco vão ser semelhantes aos dos outros setores. Portanto.
Thank you very much. And now we are moving to Antonio because he's the person to answer how to mitigate the risks, and risks are part of the biggest concern of the investors. So could you please let us know what mechanisms should be implemented by the financial institutions to make it more risk, less risk, sorry.
I get the gist.
To reduce the risk. Yeah, thank you.
So also let me just say that so I'm spearheading the organization, which is the African Bank of Oman. However, we are an Angolan bank and Angolan law. The name just reflects our shareholding structure. And prior to this, which we're quite a new bank, I've been a banker in Angola for the last 16 years, working in corporate structuring and investment banking. So I think I have the luxury of having the Angolan view of the question and also the FDI view or international view that you're posting. And I'd like to also just get rid of a myth which usually goes around, which is the difficulty of access to finance. Firstly, there's no project which is sustainable and which makes sense that no bank will finance. So the banks have more than appetite, Angolan banks and foreign banks, appetite for funding good projects. I think that's the first thing we need to get out the way and lay down our line. Now, I'd also like to post towards the investors and the financiers that in terms of FDI, the biggest risk which we face in Angola, and this is not tourism, but for any sector, is really the devaluation risk and the foreign exchange risk that we have, especially if we have either equity or financing from international sources, so dollar financing. That clearly poses a potential risk. Good that the currency has been stable for the last 18 months. But historically, when you look backwards and you backtest it, the risk of devalue is higher than valuation, although we did have one. So these are the type of things that we would look at jointly, hand in hand with the investor or the project owner to help them structure it wise. There's several mitigants we can implement. Separating the hard currency cash flows from the Kwanza cash flows and matching the debt structure to these. A good thing as well that hasn't yet been mentioned is that if the project does have dollar flows, you can access dollar lending in Angola, which is only allowed for if you have cash flows in dollars, which could be a plus because giving this gets the cost of funding quite down. But other than that, I think when you asked, I think the project sponsor is very important, especially now that we beginning with the tourism in Angola. It's less than 1% of GDP. In neighboring countries, it varies between 7 and 12% of GDP. Ideally, we'd like to get at that level. So the project sponsor name is important. Why? It guarantees flow of tourism, basically revenue, and then the ability to service those clients. So once again, what type of tourism are we looking at? Are we looking at an eco lodge with 10, 15 beds, or are we looking at something with 200 beds? It will be a different type of analysis. How you're going to get the occupancy rate, which will be in tourism basically the level or the key note that you would like to view. That's why I say the project sponsor is important. The equity versus the debt structure, how are we going to do that? We need to understand that tourism being an infra financing type of sort, we will require patient capital, preferably long tenors, so that it doesn't put a lot of stress on the cash flows of the project in the initial phases. So looking to DFIs or ECA financing, which can do 10, 12, 15 years. I think that's important for the infra part. Working capital, I mean, Vitor just said there's plenty of banks in Angola to support the short-term funding of the projects. But I would go down to that. Be aware of the FX exposure. The project sponsor is critical, and being able to explain to the banks the source of generating revenues.
Thank you very much. Now, when we know what can be done in terms of risk, the next question goes to Atia in terms of European financing. Considering your experience, what could Angola do to make it easier for them to access European grants, financing, whatever is available on the EU level?
Inbound centers work with us, but it's a difficult thing because in the last 15 years I've implemented hundreds of projects inside the European Union. And there's a lack of knowledge also for European Union, so the companies from the European Union, that how the system works. I can imagine how difficult can it be from Angola. So that's why we at the Capital European Funds Advisory, we help to understand the system. When we see the project, when we see the pipelines, and we choose which project can be funded or financed by the European Union or European institution, we can transform the project to a good and fundable project. And this is very important because the European Union has standards and has policies which has to be done by every project that is funded. For example, sustainable economy, circular economy, and so many things. And we have to design all projects to be like this. And one more interesting thing. European Union not only want to give money for investment projects. There are R&D projects, public and private partnership projects, educational partnership projects. They are also very important because if somebody, if a university, for example, from Angola, have a connection with a university from Budapest, for example, my hometown, they will learn how the European Union is thinking, and it helps to make good projects later. I think that's the key.
Thank you very much. And as we've been speaking, that it's more of a systemic approach for any country to become a more of an investment and tourism destination. My next question goes to Victor. As we all know that enterprises, not only tourism related, are part of the ecosystem. So what can make those enterprises should do to become more attractive for financing?
Bem, portanto, antes de responder a esta pergunta, se calhar socorria-me dar complemento à pergunta anterior. Portanto, Angola não tem falta de financiamentos externos. Talvez tenha falta de financiamentos externos direto, concorra ao risco direto do projeto. Portanto, o Estado tem acesso a linhas de crédito, os bancos de primeira linha têm acesso a linhas de crédito, e o tema sempre, portanto, aquilo que o António referiu, é conveniente que estas linhas de crédito sejam utilizadas para projetos geradores de receitas em dólar. Isto porquê? Por causa do risco, precisamente para cobrir o risco cambial que a operação tem. Portanto, o que é de facto difícil é encontrar linhas de financiamento que corram diretamente o risco projeto. Geralmente é risco Estado, com uma garantia soberana, ou risco balanço do banco. Portanto, existem outras linhas, de facto essas são mais acessíveis, mais difíceis de aceder. Para responder a sua pergunta, portanto, eu acho que primeiramente o rigor na gestão e o rigor financeiro. Portanto, as empresas angolanas, comparativamente há 10 anos, temos que dizer que sofreram uma melhoria significativa, mas ainda estão longe daquilo que é o ideal. Portanto, ainda continuamos a ter temas a nível das demonstrações financeiras credíveis e emitidas de forma oportuna, a questão de relatórios e contas, portanto, o rigor nos relatórios e contas, a questão dos orçamentos, as questões de planos estratégicos, a questões da governação também, ainda vamos tendo alguns problemas em termos de governação, que é preciso fazer esse caminho para que essas empresas se tornem mais bancarizáveis, estes projetos se tornem mais bancarizáveis. Depois também ter aqui um histórico de bom cumpridor, não é? Em termos de pagamento. Depois, a qualidade e a robustez dos projetos. Portanto, é necessário que os projetos tenham modelos robustos de previsões, né, de receitas e de despesas e de custos, que estes modelos sejam assentes, pelo menos naquilo que diz respeito a receitas, em estudos de mercado bastante rigorosos, para ajudar nas projeções, para termos projeções mais realistas. E depois, por último, a questão da solidez financeira e a partilha de risco. Portanto, os bancos estão muito dispostos a financiar projetos, mas é necessário também que o promotor tenha capacidade financeira para engajar entre 20% a 30% de recursos próprios no projeto, e também é conveniente que engajem garantias reais para que, quando se acontecer qualquer coisa, qualquer sinistralidade naquele financiamento, os bancos pelo menos minimizam as suas perdas. Mas há também condições que são inerentes ou são da responsabilidade do Estado. Já falámos das infraestruturas, que são essenciais para suporte. Portanto, acho que o quadro regulatório aqui também fez avanços que é preciso também destacar. Portanto, a nível dos tribunais, é necessário, de facto, que os tribunais sejam mais céleres nas decisões, quando forem nas execuções de garantias, para que, de facto, os bancos operem num ecossistema de crédito mais favorável. Não é? Portanto, eu diria que depois há os erros que os promotores têm que evitar. Portanto, geralmente, quando costuma-se dizer na gíria que o papel aceita tudo, e quando se faz as estimativas de receitas, geralmente há uma tendência de sobreavaliar as receitas. Portanto, é necessário ter esses cuidados. Há também muita tendência de uma reduzida injeção de capitais próprios nos projetos. Portanto, basicamente, os promotores, quando chegam aos bancos, a ideia é que o banco tem que financiar 100% do projeto. Portanto, isto não funciona bem assim. A questão das garantias, mas às vezes também há aqui alguma indisciplina também na gestão da tesouraria, as misturas portanto, onde é que acabam, portanto, as misturas de negócios. Isso geralmente não contribuem para o sucesso dos projetos e, por conseguinte, portanto, geralmente conduzem a crédito e incumprimento. Portanto, eu diria que são esses os conselhos que nós, tanto para tornar os projetos mais bancarizáveis. Portanto, os bancos estão dispostos a financiar bons projetos, mas também bons empresários. Portanto, startups, portanto, geralmente, não diria que não aceitamos startups, aceitamos projetos de startups. Empresários de startups é que é mais difícil. Portanto, não estão excluídos à partida, mas há maior probabilidade de financiar empresários que já têm, digamos, uma atividade económica, que já tenham provas dadas, do que alguém que só tenha uma ideia e quer pôr esta ideia em prática. Portanto, há fundos específicos para esse tipo de atividade. Portanto, aí o que eu diria que a probabilidade de aprovação é mais reduzida, mas portanto, há fundos próprios para o efeito. Portanto, basicamente...
Thank you very much. Since we're approaching the end of our panel, a bit of a visionary question. How do you think Angola can utilize its regional and international partnerships to become a true international gateway for tourism investments?
It's really a tough one for Lost. So I think a lot of what was mentioned in the morning session. We have geographically, we're very well positioned, be that in terms of commerce, be that in terms of tourism. Connectivity would be a plus, of course. Other than that, I think there's a lot of current light on Angola, and we need to capture that. If I can also just add something to your prior question, and there was a bit of a grim picture from my colleague Vitor. I think we are in front of a new frontier. So we're looking at a sector, projects and investors, which we've never had. So we shouldn't put a blanket approach on the incoming investors about historic credit worthiness of Angolan clients or whatever that may be. So you asked about the access to European funds. In the last 6 years of Angola I've been here, it's been very difficult, but for different reasons. For sure, if there's a sponsor, I think a European one, that's wanting to come to Africa, and they are in Africa, there would be more willingness to tap into those funds. And then there's a second source, which we keep falling into the trap of looking at the traditional funding of projects, either bank funding, which due to regulations, recent ones make it very expensive. But we also have now Middle Eastern capital, which we haven't talked about yet on this panel. And a very good example, and I saw them on the panel, but they didn't come, the pre-buyer, which is Casada. So Casada from the Middle East, they're an investment platform which was created by the Qatar Investment Authority jointly with Accor, a French group. And they've already deployed more than $500 million into 20 projects in Africa. So these type of partnerships, I think, are the ones which will be the future for tourism. And they should be procured, be them if they are European, American, or from the Middle East. From the Middle East, I see a lot of interest coming into Africa. Rwanda, Botswana, Zambia, Angola, I think should be clearly be on that path, be on that journey, and capture this. And other than that, I think that the opportunity is there. I mean, the videos we saw this morning, the landscape of Angola is so unique. We have, I'll say, 5 countries in one. I think the Minister has done a fantastic job. I actually see from conversations we've had, there's more interest of willingness to come to Angola than what the Angolans actually perceive. And that's a shame. So, and when I'm talking about the banking sector. I mean, in terms of the population, I think everyone's very excited. So the banking sector and the financing sector needs to look at this in the long term. There's also another source of funds that we could bring to make this long, which are pension funds. Because these are long-term projects. And pension funds, they have an invested interest into the project because it will create jobs. So they're less approach towards the population which is not doesn't have a job. So they can invest long term. So their returns will be there. This is just to say and summarize that in terms of financing, there's more that meets the eye. There's a clear ability to be in Angola. I think the promoters, they want Angola on their map. When they sell Africa, you cannot have a whole in West Africa. You need to fill it. And I've heard from the coffee stations so much excitement around Angola. So I think we've already gotten to that path. Now it's about the next step, which is really getting projects, financing them, and having tourism in Angola.
Thank you very much. And my one last question lands with Atia. Based on your experience, what strategy could Angola implement to attract large-scale institutional investors for big infrastructure or whatever projects that are required here in the local market?
First of all, Europe has to know Angola and has to know Africa. Because in the last decades, I feel that Europe forgot about Africa a little bit. And now we have to learn again how things work here. But for example, this occasion is a very good opportunity to see what possibilities can be here in Angola and also in Africa. And it's a very interesting question because next year, European Union has a new 7 years budget. And it's still is a decision that how much budget goes to which funds. And when we go back home, we will have the message that there are very good opportunities here, and you have to put more and more possibilities to make businesses in Africa for European companies, because it's very important, I think, also for Africa and also for Europe. Because it's not... So it's important for everybody to have those kind of projects here that is a win-win situation for both sides. And not just for the country itself, but for the Angolan people and the society. And of course, also for the European Union. So I think those are the main, most important things. And one more. We talk about so many times about fundable projects, structured projects, and to meet with the policies. But my message to Angola is that learn from Europe, learn from Asia, and learn from America. Meet the standards, but do it in your way. Do it in Angolan way.
Thank you very much.